In this lesson, we'll continue building the eyes for our character. Alright, so in the previous lesson, we created sort of the eyeliner as well as the white of the eye. And we also drew around sort of the pupil of our character's eye here. So we're going to pick up where we left off here. And I'm going to come over here and let's go ahead and give this pupil a little different color here. I'm going to come over and apply a no stroke to it, and I'm going to come over to my gradient panel, and let's go ahead and apply a radial gradient to this. Now, I'm going to come in at this point and kind of customize this gradient here. So let's come in here, and maybe for this lighter color here, let's go ahead and select sort of a light greenish color here. So I'm going to hold shift and hit the color bar down here at the bottom to switch over to my preferred color panel layout, which is HSB. And I'm going to come over here and just sort of tweak this up just a little bit. And we're going to get that over towards a nice warm green color. And let me get rid of this brown color over here. I'm going to come over and let's go ahead and go back to that HSB. And I'm going to go ahead and set this to a nice, cool, kind of almost a blue-green color. We're going to really make that dark and saturated, though. Right about there. So now I'm going to go ahead and set that midpoint. I'm going to adjust that over to where we get a nice glow sort of in the center here. I'm going to double click that color stop again, and let's go ahead and adjust the brightness on that a little bit higher. Really kind of get that eye to glow just a little bit here. Now I'm going to go ahead and set a middle color here. I'm going to go ahead and click right about there, and you can see here that we add another color stop to our gradient bar. I'm going to go ahead and double click on that, and let's go ahead and get that to almost a muddy green, muddy warm green here. Just set the brightness up a little higher. There we go, that's looking pretty good. Alright, so we're looking pretty good here. I may need to come over and adjust the brightness on this color stop, so make it not quite as dark. And I'll go ahead and hit G on my keyboard to bring up my gradient tool so we can adjust this gradient annotator here. I'm going to go ahead and just stretch that out just a little bit and center that up a little bit better here. So we've got sort of the nice coloration in the eye set, and at this point I need to go ahead and do the pupil of the eye. So I'm going to go ahead and hit L on my keyboard to grab the ellipse tool, and let's just come in here and hold shift and draw a perfect circle here. And we'll go ahead and swing this into position here. Even though that doesn't have the right color on it, we're going to go ahead and set that right about the center here, making it a little bit larger. And let's go ahead and hit D and send that back to the default color scheme, because I want to go ahead and set a custom gradient for this particular shape. So I'm going to come in here and let's do this fade to black gradient, and we'll go ahead and set that to radial. And what that has done here is it's assigned two black color stops to our gradient bar. One of them has a decreased opacity, though. If I come over here and click on this one, and you'll see here that the opacity for that one is set to 0, which is what I want. So I'm going to go ahead and slide that midpoint over quite a bit more here. And I may even come in and change the color of this one to sort of that nice cool green color we were working with earlier. Right about there. Maybe even over to the left a little bit more. Alright, that looks pretty good. Now, you'll notice here that even though we have an opacity of 0 for this color stop, there's still a transition between the two color stops here. So if we look here, you're still getting a little bit of the strange coloration here inside this gradient. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to go ahead and set this over to multiply. And I'm going to come up here and hit the opacity in my control panel at the top, which is going to give me a shortcut to my transparency panel. Here we can come in and drop down and set a blend mode for that particular object. Go ahead and set that to multiply here. And that's looking pretty good. Let's go ahead and zoom in, and maybe we'll just make that a little bit larger. And that may just be a little bit too large. Let me shrink that down just a little bit there. Alright, great. Let me just come over and adjust that midpoint just a little bit further here. Playing with those so I can get a nice sharp transition between the gradient and the solid black center. There we go. That's starting to look really nice. Alright, so that's going to work pretty well. So let's go ahead and shift our attention over to the white of the eye here, because as we all know, the white of one's eye isn't completely white. There's some color contamination there from shadows and from blood vessels and things of that sort. So let's go ahead and just apply a quick radial gradient to this. And we definitely don't want it to be the same as the gradient we were just using here. So let's come in here and bring this opacity up. Let's go ahead and set this color stop to white. And we'll go ahead and drop another color stop on there. And let's go ahead and set this one to, let's see, sort of maybe a warm orangish color. There we go. And let's go ahead and bring that saturate or that brightness up just a little bit. And we'll go ahead and slide that midpoint over. Start to create a little bit of shadow inside the corners of the eye here. I'm going to actually come in and darken that up just a bit. And let's see, maybe saturate it a little bit more, and even put a little more red in that. Let's go ahead and grab our gradient tool here, and let's expand that gradient annotator out just a little bit. That way we can not have such a sharp transition into this color. Alright, so that's working pretty well. I may come in and tweak these colors up in between lessons here. But we've created a nice shadow on the corners of the eye. But you think about an eye, and you think about the eyelid that is above the eye, and there's a little bit of a cast shadow as well. So let's come in here, and might even be able to see that if we jump in here. And you can kind of see that here in the photograph underneath. There is sort of a real subtle line right about here. And basically there's a little window of illumination here on the white of the eye, right about in this area. So let's go ahead and see if we can't create that. We'll jump back out of outline mode here. And I'm just going to go ahead and grab my pen tool here for just a moment. We're going to come in and just sort of draw in that window of illumination here. Let's go ahead and set an anchor point right about there. Set another one right over here for right now. And I'm going to grab my direct selection tool here. And let me jump into outline mode so we don't have to deal with the color in our way. And we'll just kind of swing that up and around. Let's go ahead and drag out that anchor point one more time, or that Bezier handle rather. And we'll come in and pull in another one right about there. I'm going to bring this kind of down and around the lower eyelid here, so I can basically just have a little bit of sliver in between the two. That way we've got a little bit of a cast shadow from the lower eyelid as well. Alright, we've just about got it. Let's go ahead and close that path off. Alright, great. So we've created this sort of window here, and we want a shadow around this. So let's jump out of outline mode here. Let's come over and grab the white of our eye. Let's copy that with a Control-C, and I'm going to paste that in front with a Control-F. Now, in doing that, we've got two copies of the white of the eye. You can see if I drag one out. Let's go ahead and bring the one we have selected all the way to the top with a Control-Shift close bracket. I'm going to go ahead and send it backwards once with a Control open bracket so that we have our custom shape on top of that here. So we've got both shapes. Let's go ahead and select them both here, and let's use the minus front shape mode in the Pathfinder panel. So we'll just basically punch a hole through that copied and pasted shape here. Now with that done, we can come over here and we can start playing with the gradient for that shape. So I'm going to come over here first, and let's go ahead and give this a nice dark gradient here. Let's give it a nice deep red color, maybe a blue. And let's go ahead and take this white, and let's drop the opacity all the way down on that. Alright, great. Now, we still have that kind of on top of our other shapes here, so I'm going to go ahead and grab that. We're going to send it back one step here so that it's underneath our eyeliner. Actually, we may need to go one more. There we go. Now we've got that shape underneath our eyeliner. And I'll tell you what, let's go ahead and set the opacity, or come up to the transparency panel rather, set the blend mode over to multiply, and we could even drop the opacity of that object down a little bit if we need to. Something like that. So now we've got this nice cast shadow on the eye, and we've got sort of this window of illumination on the lower half of the eye. All right, great. So our eye is looking really pretty good at this point. We've got a little bit of detail left to add to that, because obviously that doesn't look like a very realistic eye to me. We still need to come in here and add sort of this tear duct area, as well as some eyelashes and some highlights and some things like that. So I tell you what, in the next lesson, we'll pick up where we're leaving off here, and we'll finish up building this eye.